Cristiano Ronaldo's best moments. We've given Mark Ogden the unenviable task of whittling them down to 5. And just to make it even more difficult, it's across his whole career for club and country. So, Mark, in at number 5, you've gone for a game for country. It was a playoff for the World Cup. It was against Sweden, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic was on the same pitch, but still, Cristiano Ronaldo came out on top.
Yeah, a lot of people might not factor this one in terms of Ronaldo's biggest highlights. And I mean, I was at the game that night in Stockholm, and they'd beaten Sweden 1-0 in Lisbon going into the second leg. But it was billed as Ronaldo versus Zlatan, these kind of two superstars up against each other for a place in the World Cup. I mean, this was like, Brazil 2014 was going to miss either Zlatan or Ronaldo, so it's a big deal. So we went to Stockholm and thinking, well, 1-0 lead from the first leg, it's not great. And, Zlatan was really talking a good game as he does. But Ronaldo that night was just absolutely out of this world. It was amazing. He scored a hat-trick, and it was almost like he got in there thinking, right, I'll show you who is the number one. Or, it certainly wasn't Zlatan. The whole Messi-Ronaldo thing will never go away. But on that night, it was a 1 and 2 and a very distant third with Zlatan way, way, way back in third. Ronaldo just took it upon himself just to destroy Sweden. And I think he scored a hat-trick that night, and obviously Portugal qualified for the World Cup, and Zlatan stayed at home. But I just remember how good he was that night, Ronaldo. It was a real statement performance, that.
I think even Zlatan Ibrahimovic ended up clapping him after his third goal and just gave him loads of praise after the game.
Yeah, well, that's what it was like. I think, to be fair to Zlatan, he does talk a good game, but I think at times he will put his hands up, and listen, we can talk about Zlatan for hours and hours, and the one thing that people misunderstand about Zlatan is that the arrogance and the self-confidence, a lot of it's a bit of an act. When he was at Man United, I was told he was so popular with the younger players because he would take time and help them out, and he was really popular as a person and as a guy. So I think with Zlatan, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. But again, the same applies to Ronaldo. People might not believe it, but Ronaldo is a really popular guy amongst his teammates and people at the clubs that he's played for. So I think it's worth pointing out that he's not this kind of moody, arrogant peacock that people think he is at times.
So that's Cristiano Ronaldo for Portugal. You're going for a Manchester United game for him next, a big one. It was that Champions League final against Chelsea where he scored the only goal for United, but also missed a penalty. So why have you put this one in there?
Yeah, people forget he missed a penalty because they only talk about John Terry's penalty, don't they? But I think this was his first Champions League, and Ronaldo has come to kind of typify the Champions League. It's all about Ronaldo and Messi again, but this was the first time he won it in 2008, and he played a huge part in United winning it that year. It was a header that he scored in the first half against Chelsea, a brilliant header, classic Ronaldo header really. We jumped so high, and but then it could have been about him in a different way with the penalty. If that penalty miss had gone down as the one that had cost you out of the Champions League, he was crying on the pitch afterwards, between John Terry missing, and it was. For me, it was just the fact that it was his first Champions League, and obviously at the time there was a lot of kind of, what do you call it, speculation that he was going to go to Madrid that summer. And Ferguson persuaded him to stay for one more year, and he did. They got to the Champions League final again when they lost to Messi's Barcelona. So, the night in Moscow was the big moment, the first really big moment of his career, I think.
Yeah, because you mentioned that crying afterwards, because despite the fact they won and he scored that goal for them, the fact he missed the penalty was what seemed to bother him so much. Have you, in your years covering football, seen many players more competitive than he?
No, I mean, again, that's the thing about Ronaldo, that he is ultra competitive and ultra professional. I remember speaking to Rio Ferdinand about him once when he was a kid at United. Ronaldo would do training, and he would go in and get showered and get changed again and put on ankle weights and go back onto the training pitch and just with his ankle weights and practice his step overs on his own in the rain in Manchester. He hated the weather in Manchester, but he was out there like every afternoon, ankle weights on, doing his step overs, putting in the yards. And at the time, the United players were just kind of shaking their head in disbelief that this guy had so much energy and so much dedication. But that, look at him now, he's 34, 35, and he's still going strong because he's the epitome of a dedicated athlete. And we've all seen The Last Dance with Michael Jordan recently, and it's impossible to compare Michael Jordan to anybody. But in terms of football, in terms of the closest you can get to Michael Jordan in terms of dedication and focus and the desire to win, I think Ronaldo's right up there.
Yeah, I think especially when you see him berating his teammates, maybe that would be another comparison that you could make to Jordan, because he obviously wants everybody to be on his level too. Now, the next game you've gone for is a game for country again. It's a massive one. It's the Euro 2016 final when Portugal won it, but Cristiano Ronaldo barely featured in this one as a player because of injury.
Yeah, a bit like Moscow, we kind of remember this for Ronaldo's tears in a way because the game wasn't 10, 15 minutes old and he suffered an injury and he had to go off. And this was Portugal v France in the Euro 2016 final in Paris. France were the outstanding favourites, and obviously Portugal, everyone thinking Portugal a one-man team. It's all about Ronaldo. Then he goes off. So they're having to win this game without Ronaldo, but the reality is they were winning it with Ronaldo because he was on the touchline for the rest of the game, almost like becoming the manager, dictating from the touchline, encouraging his teammates. And then when the penalty shootout came, he was doing it again. And, yes, he didn't actually score the goal that won the European Championship for Portugal, but he was a massive part of Portugal winning it. And obviously, again, we talk about the Ronaldo-Messi debate. Well, Messi's never won an international trophy, and Ronaldo has. So that puts him ahead of Messi in that one. And, unless Messi wins the World Cup or the next Copa America, I think Ronaldo will always have that international thing ahead of Messi. And, that's one thing that they can never get back.
You're a brave man, Mark Ogden, going on the record saying that. Is that your measuring stick then, an international trophy?
I think it's got to be one of them because people measure Messi against Maradona, don't they? Because Maradona basically single-handedly won the World Cup for Argentina in 1986. So, Messi's had his opportunities to do it and he hasn't done it. And he came close in 2014. I still think it's not the ultimate barometer, is it? But I think it does elevate players to a certain level. People like Zidane have won World Cups, Maradona, Pele. Messi hasn't done it. And I think that will be the thing that will always kind of scratch away at Messi if he doesn't actually do it. That he's been this amazing performer on the club stage, but the actual biggest stage, a lot of the World Cup, it hasn't actually delivered.
Look out for those mentions in your Twitter account. And at number 2, it's La Decima. It's his first Champions League win with Real Madrid in 2014. So why this one? Because there are a few to choose from.
Well, yeah, obviously been at Real for 5 years by this point, and Real had signed him in 2009 as the most expensive player in the world to make Real Madrid the best team in the world, both in Spain and in Europe. And after he arrived, it was all Barcelona, wasn't it? Certainly for it was Pep's Barcelona for 4 or 5 years, and Madrid had always been kind of in the shadows. I think prior to winning it in 2014, Barca had done the treble under Pep. So, the pressure was on, and 5 years in, he still hadn't won the Champions League. So winning his first Champions League with Real was a massive thing for him personally. But obviously, like you say, it was La Decima. It was their 10th European Cup, and they went on to win the next 2. So they won a hat-trick of European Cup. So it was the start of a real kind of era of dominance for Real Madrid, and it was the reason why Ronaldo went to Real to win the Champions League again. So he achieved his ambitions there, but obviously went on again and again in the years afterwards. But the first one is always the biggest, and I think winning it for Carlo Ancelotti as well, who was a popular guy at Real, was a big moment. So yeah, that first European Cup for Real Madrid will always be his bigged, I think.
Because it was a 4-1 win in extra time and he scored the 4th goal. It was a penalty, but he had this crazy celebration, ripped his shirt off, flexed his muscles, typical Ronaldo. And that upset many people. It really divided a lot of fans. What did you make of a celebration like that?
Well, we all know that Ronaldo likes taking his top off and showing off his pecs, doesn't he? Look, it was in Lisbon as well. I think people have to accept that it was a massive moment for him personally at the club level. But, winning it in Lisbon, obviously from Madeira, but Portugal, capital of Lisbon's capital of Portugal, it had the real home crowd behind him. So it must have been a huge moment for Ronaldo to celebrate winning the European Cup in Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, where he's an absolute god. You walk around Lisbon, and every bus stop and every billboard has got a picture of Ronaldo on it. He's just an absolute icon, and obviously it all started from him in Lisbon with Sporting. So, I can see why he was so determined to celebrate that one.
Yeah, 17 goals as well in the Champions League that season. So fair enough. You mentioned Sporting, and that's where we go for your number 1 pick here. It was a balmy August night in 2003. It was a pre-season game, Sporting against Manchester United, which essentially ended up being his United audition.
Yeah, and again, people will think, God, why is that? He's the highlight of Ronaldo's career. But, without that night against Man United, Ronaldo's career may have gone on a completely different path. Arsenal were quite keen to sign him. I think a couple of clubs in Italy were quite keen to sign him. But obviously going to United, and the treatment he got at United from the likes of Roy Keane, Rio Ferdinand, Alex Ferguson, it turned him into the player and the man that he became, and this international superstar that he is. But the story of that game was that United had just come back from I think they'd been on a summer tour of the United States, and they had to play this game to open Sporting's new stadium in Lisbon. And I thought a lot of the United players weren't really up for it. They were jet lagged, and they weren't really thinking, who's this guy in the left wing that everyone's talking about, the left wing for Sporting Lisbon. And Ronaldo just absolutely destroyed John O'Shea, who was playing at right back that night. And some of the United players said that O'Shea was so bad he ended up with twisted blood because Ronaldo just turned him inside out. And the dressing room after the game, I'm told that the players were all saying to Sir Alex, "You've got to sign this guy. Who is he? You've got to sign him." And again, I did a piece on Ronaldo, shortly after he left United to talk about his time in Manchester. And the story that I got from the players was that they were sat on the team bus outside the stadium for about 2 hours because Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously he'd known about Ronaldo and he was keen to sign him, but he was so impressed by the performance that night. He basically said to David Gill, the chief exec, "We are not leaving this stadium until you get a deal to sign Cristiano Ronaldo." So the players were sat on the bus for ages and ages until Ferguson got back on the bus and said, "Boys, it's done." And he signed Ronaldo. And then he turns up and again, with this crazy haircut, this kind of teenage haircut and braces on his teeth. And we're all thinking, who is this guy? Ronaldo? That's not Ronaldo. It's the guy who plays for Real Madrid. But yeah, he was the guy that obviously signed for United to replace David Beckham, took the number 7 shirt, and he just owned it. He owned the number 7 shirt. And from the point he made his debut against Bolton, same sort of thing, destroyed the fullback. And he was just loved by the United fans. And that was the moment it all started, that night in Lisbon.
It's funny that you mentioned Rio Ferdinand, Roy Keane, Sir Alex Ferguson, because all three of them have talked about this very game in their autobiographies. It's your number one of all those games for Ronaldo, is it then, just because that is where it all began and because on a stage like that, when he knew he was being watched by such a big club like United, he delivered?
Absolutely. He's won so many trophies, I can't even count. Was it 4 or 5 Champions League? You lose count. He's won the league. He's won the Premier League. He's won the FA Cup. He's won everything. So you can't really pick out one of the trophies he's won because somebody said, "Well, he's won another one." But like you say, the night when he knew he had to perform to sign for one of the biggest clubs in the world, to have his chance to make it on the big stage, and he delivered. Not just delivered, but he actually was outstanding. And I think that game when he was 17 showed Ronaldo's character for the first time. That you give him a challenge, he won't only meet it, he'll go beyond it, and he'll surprise everybody. So that's why it's the biggest game, because he showed us all that night what it was all about for the next 15, maybe 20 years.
A few notable absences then I'm going to pick you apart on. So they're your 5. Mm-hmm. The overhead kick against Juve, where would that have come for you, in your top 10?
Yeah, well, that was almost on my list, and it probably come number 6 because it was an amazing goal, and obviously the reaction from the fans inside the stadium in Juventus was another moment. Beating people like a goalkeeper like Buffon as well. It was one of those iconic moments. But he scored loads of stunning goals, hasn't he? You could pick the header he scored against United in the Bernabeu in 2013. That was a stunning goal. The goal he scored against United, I think, in Turin for Juventus a couple of years ago. He scored so many stunning goals. So why pick that one? As the best, but it was very close to the top 5, yeah.
And then there's a few. There's a Porto goal. There's also that goal in the Clásico when Jose Mourinho went on to win with Real Madrid, and he told the Camp Nou, calma. Well, he told basically the Madrid fans, calm down, I'm here, don't worry about it. So obviously there's always so many to pick from. But when it comes to his defining moment, Mark Ogden says it's the night where it all began. That game, Sporting against Manchester United, the game that changed everything.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.